I'd like to introduce everyone to Jason Lee, the CEO of the Home Care Association of America, to kick things off. Jason.
Great. Thank you, Ravine. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Our sincere hope is that you'll walk away with strategies that you can start implementing immediately in terms of supercharging your home care hiring. Just by way of background, Jason Lee, CEO of the Home Care Association of America. I joined last October, still fairly new. We're a robust association of almost 4,500 members. We're here to help you. We provide leadership, representation, and education for the advancement of home care, and provide a strong unified voice to speak to issues of concern within the home care industry. And we certainly hope you'll join us. We have the 2024 HCOA National Home Care Conference in Bellevue, Washington on October 28th and 29th of this year. So we hope to see you there. Our colleague who's here today, Bob Roth, will be presenting and providing a session there. So certainly encourage everybody to join us, and I hope to personally see you there. So excited to be here with Hello Hire. They're dedicated to helping home care agencies. They work to dramatically reduce the time it takes to hire, eliminate no calls, no shows, and ensure that you hire top quality caregivers. So thank you to Ravine and Hello Hire. And this is such an important topic. Recruitment and retention are so critical to the industry. You may have seen the 2024 Activate Insights benchmarking report, where you saw the median turnover rate for professional caregivers jump 2 percentage points from 77.1% in 2022 to 79.2% in 2023. And that's the highest turnover rate since 2018, where the turnover peaked at about 81.6%. You also may have seen the HCOA and the National Association for Home Care and Hospice Workforce Crisis Report that we put together, and you can find that on the HCOA website, hcoa.org. And we talk a lot about the challenge of having enough caregivers to keep up with the ever-growing need, and we walk through, some steps that we can take to address that. And we'll hear more about similar things today during this webinar. So today's format will be a presentation of the group, followed by Q&A. Feel free to use the chat to ask questions at any time, and those will be addressed at the end. So again, we want to thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules. And with that, we'll move into speaker introductions. I'll start with someone who I know well and highly respect, Bob Roth. Thank you, everyone.
Jason, thank you. Thank you for the intro. And I'm really excited about being here today. As you can see in this picture, it depicts a little bit about who Cyprus is. I'm going to do a deeper dive into Cyprus as we get into this presentation. But excited to be here today to really talk about how we're innovating. And certainly one of the things I've learned over the years, in order to innovate, you have to collaborate. And I'm really excited about the partnership that we've formed together with Home Care Pro as well as Hello Hire. And I'm going to step back and let the others introduce themselves, but you'll hear more from me and about Cyprus and how Ravine and Connor and I got together to really help problem solve and really innovate the way we onboard caregivers as frictionless as possible. Thank you, guys.
Connor.
Pleasure to meet you all. Excited to be here. I'm based in the Seattle, Washington area, and Jason, really looking forward to your conference in the fall. Excited to be there and meet you in person. I am the CEO and founder of Home Care Pro. My family's background is all in small business and commercial fishing here in the Pacific Northwest. So I grew up in and around small business, and it's been a pleasure or a passion of mine for a long time. I took a different route and went into software. And I've spent my entire career focusing on tools to help small business owners run their businesses more efficiently with less friction, like Bob said. And Home Care Pro is focused on helping with onboarding, credentialing to make the employment experience for caregivers as easy as possible.
Thanks, Connor. And I'm Ravine Shaw, the CEO and founder of Hello Hire. I just want to thank the Home Care Association of America and Jason for really helping us put this together, and Bob and Connor for being here to share their expertise. I also want to thank all of you for taking valuable time out of your day to be here. I spent the majority of my 25-year career in technology building solutions to solve efficiency and productivity challenges. And the last 4 years have really been dedicated to improving recruitment for industries that have high turnover, like retail, hospitality, call centers, and of course, home care. Some of our early customers include Skechers, Staples, KFC, Toronto Raptors, and a lot of recognizable brands that hire a lot of people. And while these are all very different industries, they share a lot of the same hiring dynamics and challenges. Um, I live in Toronto, and when I'm not working, I try to squeeze as much time as I can with my wife and two daughters. Um, for those of you, who know about the Home Care Innovation Forum, it happened in May, and I was fortunate to be able to attend. And this was in Napa, and it was an intimate gathering of 75 top home care leaders from across the United States. It was honestly a perfect mix of knowledge, networking, and fun, and by far the best business event I've ever been to. Thanks, Bob, for telling me about it. If you're thinking about it again, I would highly recommend it. Now, at that conference, they asked those 75 top home care leaders what their top priorities for the year are. And, as you can see, growth and expansion were top of mind. Now, you can also see here that caregivers, workforce, and retention are also critically important. The same leaders were asked what solutions they're exploring. And it's no surprise that AI and automation were at the top of that list. And after all, that's what brought us all here today. Now, that's also what brought Bob and I together originally. A couple months before that conference, Bob and I guess it was perfect timing, but we were at the early stages of diving into the home care market, and he was in the process of transforming his agency's recruitment technology and processes. And again, the timing couldn't have been better. We met, and again, we've made some amazing progress together, and we're here to share a little bit of that with you all. So, Bob, let's dive a little deeper into the why. Sorry, Bob, I think you're on mute.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to, take this time to really talk a little bit about Cyprus's journey. I didn't want to, take too much away from Connor and Ravine, who are really critical parts to what we have accomplished here at Cyprus. So first and foremost, Cyprus in April celebrated their 30th year being in the home care business. And just give you a little backstory about Cyprus, and I think each and every one of you may have a similar story. But in 1985, my mother, at the age of 48, had a massive heart attack and spent nearly 2 months in the hospital, 18 days in a drug-induced coma, and then came home a very different person. My brothers and I and my dad, we found ourselves as accidental caregivers. And, in 1985, there were no home care companies as we know them today. There was not even assisted living at that time. So when you really think about where we have come as an industry, we have really, or should I say, we're still in our infancy, so to speak. I mean, it wasn't until 1994 when we started Cyprus Home Care Solutions here in Phoenix to be able to help and assist those families in caring for loved ones. We knew that firsthand from being caregivers for our own mom. So we, have this incredible journey, and that journey is, being caregivers for our mother really gave us the fortitude and the impetus to really start a home care company. And Cyprus has always been, and many of you here on the show or on this webinar today may know about Cyprus. Some of you may not. So I've got friends that are on, some that are, let's call you all new friends. Cyprus has always had a reputation of a culture of innovation. And, I bring a lot in terms of my experience. I didn't want to go through the entire chart. I think it was the second or third slide about my background, but I come from the consumer product goods world. So I worked on brands like the Quaker Oats Company, Gatorade, and Dole Foods. I served in roles in sales, marketing, brand management, trade marketing. So a lot of that I've brought to the home care trade. A lot of it is really messaging and communicating and marketing. So Cyprus, when I first joined, Cyprus started in 1994. I started in 2003. My brother Joe ran the company for nearly 10 years. It's hard to believe I've been at the helm now for 20. But when we started, when I started 20 years ago, I saw an opportunity to innovate. And one of the things I've learned about innovation, you've got to collaborate. So Cyprus has really gained a national reputation for some of the things that we've done. Everything from creating a training lab and a training center like no one's business. I think we were the first in the home care industry back at the end of 2004, 2005. It represented about a third of our workspace that we dedicated to training. We trained family caregivers throughout the country or throughout the state or Maricopa County region. We trained as many as 1,500 of them. We even had a hot board long before these 60, 70, 80, 90-inch TVs were less than $2,000. We paid a lot of money for it, but we tied it into our enterprise software solution, and we could put on that hot board open shifts so everybody could see what those shifts were. When Stephen Tweed started his field trips before he started the mastermind group, we had two of his first three locations, or should I say two of his first three field trips. We probably had somewhere in the neighborhood about 60 home care agencies come in and get a chance to really kick our tires and see what we were doing. I share that with you because I really believe that each one of us should share best practices. And what was really thrilling for me is that in various times in the last 20 years, I have gone to different cities and visited other home care companies and visited some of those companies that came to visit us and saw training labs. I saw hot boards. It was really cool to see that. I mean, we all know that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And to me, that was really exciting. We created an A team. What is an A team? An A team was something that we created on Thursdays before the weekend, and we found caregivers, or we put together caregivers that would take shifts on weekends that would be on standby in case we had a call off. And then we created a dementia program. And I share all of this because it's that culture of innovation. And that dementia program got us national recognition. We spoke at the HCOA, we spoke at Home Care 100. We even got to speak at the National Association of Home Care and Hospice and share best practices. So along the culture of innovation, we joined the Honor Care Network in 2019. And I know a lot of people know a lot about Honor, and Honor purchased Home Instead. I believe it was in 2021 or 2022. I think it was 2021. And they became the largest home care company in the world. That experience, while it was a leap of faith that we took, was one that came with mixed feelings, if you would. But one of the things I take away from that experience is we learned a lot, and I learned a lot from those folks that work there. You're talking about incredibly intelligent people, and I feel like I upped my intellectual game because I was surrounded by people in their late 20s to early 40s that were MBAs, and they were really bright and they wanted to learn about home care. And I learned a lot from them. I learned a great deal from them. So, we came off the Honor Care platform February 1st. And I share that with you because, look, it was an interesting experience. It's kind of like buying a boat. The best day in someone's life is when they buy the boat. The better day is when they sell it. I was excited to get back the business, and the business in terms of managing the caregivers, recruiting the caregivers, hiring the caregivers, training caregivers, all the stuff that comes along with being a home care agency. See, we did that for 25 years. And then for about 4.5 years, we were part of the Honor Care Network. So now we came back. So I share a little bit about that with you because when we first joined or left the Honor Care Network, we had a total of 19 employees. caregivers. Those caregivers were doing Medicaid work, and they were also, as we call them, rapid response caregivers. Our journey after February 1st was to hire as many caregivers as possible. I'm blessed of having an incredible team. I got a gentleman that works for me by the name of Dan Weeks, who is incredibly brilliant and smart, much smarter than I am when it comes to doing some of the tasks and the strategic objectives that we were looking to accomplish to onboard caregivers. I also got an introduction to Connor Adams, and I got an introduction from Connor Adams by a woman by the name of Jenna Morgenstern Gaines. Many may not know her, but she's a co-founder of Pocket RN. I have a partnership with Pocket RN, and that's for another day. I can talk to you about that. But Connor and Jenna became friends through a mutual friend, and Jenna was the one that introduced me to Connor. And I'm going to talk to you about the power of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really powerful. I got a chance to meet Ravine through one of his colleagues by the name of Raj. Raj pinged me, and all of us get hit up by LinkedIn. And there's nothing worse than when someone verbally vomits all over you and tells you everything about what they're trying to sell to you. The most important thing about LinkedIn is how we connect, find something in common. And Raj piqued my interest because he found something in common. I'd already had a relationship with Connor, and we're going to talk a little bit about Home Care Pro and what they've done for Cyprus. But Raj was the one that opened the door, and I saw the opportunity that could be with Hello Hire, and that's how I met Ravine, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I really wanted to share with you guys that, look, we're in a great time right now. I mean, this is incredible time. I mean, look, healthcare takes up about 1/3 of our GDP, and we are aging at an incredible rate. The 65-year-old population is going to double between now and 2050. The 85-year-old population is going to quadruple between now and 2050. And in order to sustain our population at almost 340 million Americans, every child-rearing female needs to have 2.1 babies. And we're at 1.7, declining to 1.6. So we have a real conundrum. We know that the headwinds are need. We know that the tailwinds are caregiver availability and finding caregivers, as well as the cost of our services. So for me, more than anything, I love the home care industry because it's a real sharing experience. I have a lot of friends that are, some people would say, competitors. I'll steal a line from Peter Ross. They're my frenemies. Our true competitor are private caregivers. And we are really at an inflection point. And Jason, I know you're new with HCOA, but when the companion exemption rule went away in 2014, 2015, we lost a lot of caregivers to the underground. When the pandemic happened in 2019, 2020, we lost more caregivers to the underground, and they went private. What's hard for me and so many of you that have been around a long time, families used to supplement the care that we did with private care. We're now being asked to supplement private care with agency care. So we have to work a lot harder, and we have to work a lot harder to find caregivers. And here I was, no longer part of the Honor Care Network, and I had to figure out how to recruit caregivers, how to bring caregivers into the funnel and bring them out of the funnel and on board to ready to serve our clients. Now, 2019, I knew how we did it. We had a 4-phase interviewing process. We had a phone interviewing process. We had a visit to Cyprus with my HR manager. And then we had invited them to orientation. And like many of you, orientation is still an interviewing process. We had a 4 to 5 hour orientation process, and those caregivers that were there, we were paying them, but they were still being interviewed. And then the 4th phase of that interview process was having our schedulers orient with our caregivers. So the schedulers would come in for the last hour and they would explain how scheduling was done. So, that's kind of the way we worked in the old Cyprus regime, if you would. We had 5,000 square feet. Like I said earlier, 1/3 of it was dedicated to training, recruiting, and a training lab. And we had a pretty slick onboarding process. But since the pandemic, everything's changed. And the caregivers don't come to us anymore. We got to go to them. So I mentioned Dan Weeks, who works for us. Dan and Jasmine Plett, who also works with us. They used to go to locations, whether it be Starbucks, whether it be a library or senior center, to meet with caregivers. And even though we were sending them text messages or talking to them and confirming, we still were getting 20 to 30% no call, no shows, and burning up a lot of capital, human capital and financial capital, to go out there and not have anybody show. So when Raj connected with me, I already began working on the documentation piece that Connor's going to talk to you about. But all of a sudden, my eyes were open. It was just like, wow. One thing I learned from Honor, and trust me, they did not let me in the inner sanctum, if you would. So I don't know how they really truly worked, but I did learn that they used a lot of automation, workforce automation, a lot of machine learning, artificial intelligence to do the tasks of redundancy and repetitive tasks that humans would do. And I know that we could put those together in terms of smoothing out that funnel of onboarding caregivers. How could we utilize innovation and technology to be able to do that? And for us, it was a great collaboration. And for those that know me, I'm all about sharing, because I want to go back to, you all are not my competition. The 700 home care companies are really not my competition. It's private care. There's enough business out there for everybody. Why not share best practices? Collaboration is so important in our industry. And I think that old saying that rising tides lift all boats is so true in the home care space. Remember I said, we're still in our infancy. We're kind of like pre-teenage right now, because we've only really been around for about 30 years, legitimately 30, 35 years. I mean, Home Instead, which is owned by Honor, they started in 1994 when we did. And they were the first legitimate, if you would, franchise. And now they're close to 100 franchises now. So the business is big out there. We have a lot of opportunity out there. You know, for me, I want you to understand that we are constantly improving what we're working on. And this slide that you're looking at right now really shows the latest version of what we've done. And I want to explain this to you. So this partnership with Connor and Ravine, with Home Care Pro and with Hello Hire, was vital to our success in smoothing out the process. So we do a lot of automation on the engagement. And I think, you know, I know Ravine and Connor are going to talk a little bit more about that. But you know, one of the things that we did was we added a second interview, and that actually is now the first interview. So when we're interviewing a candidate, and we're doing it via, like we are right now, as a webinar, it's a tele, you know, communication interview, right? So we have a Zoom, or it's a Google Meet interview with our, actually it's on the Hello Hire platform, interview with a potential caregiver. That first interview is no more than 10 minutes. And that first interview is intentional because we want to understand the why. You know, we can sit down and ask them about all their credentials and stuff like that, and we're saving that for that second interview. But we want to know why they are in home care. Because as I shared with you, you know, it is really hard. One of the headwinds is price. So our clients are paying concierge type pricing, and we cannot settle for mediocrity. So Dan, who's been leading this charge, spends 10 minutes at the very most. It's probably a little less, and I know Ravine will share some data with you, but we want to understand why they chose caregiving. We ask very open-ended questions because we want to get to the heart of who they are and why they joined us, or why they are intending to join us. And then the automation process takes place, and that is what Connor does with Home Care Pro. And then there's a second interview. Remember, I talked about a 4-phase interview. So here's the first interview. We're trying to find out the why. The second interview is after we've done the automated process. Now we're asking for specifics about credentialing and experience and references and everything comes along with that. And then the third phase is the in-person interview, or in-person orientation, which happens at our offices. We have it scheduled every Tuesday, and Dan and or Jasmine, if the situation presents itself, they'll do a second one later on in the week, and they'll typically do that maybe remote and have 2 or 3 potential caregivers come together. And their scheduler does join them as well. So that's the 4th phase of interviewing. So the key is getting them through the funnel as smoothly as possible and get them out to work. We're going to share some data with you. I mean, seriously, we're getting people through the funnel, quality people. And when I tell you that, we've went from at the end of January having about 19 available caregivers to today having almost 130 that are working with us, we had to come up with a process that was going to work. And I truly believe utilizing workforce or workflow automation and utilizing the tools that automation brings will make us the success that we can be. And again, I love sharing this with you. If this can help you guys onboard caregivers and smooth out that funnel and get caregivers to get to work faster, by golly, I want to share that with you. So that's why we're here today. I'm going to step back and let my colleagues that are here on the webinar today speak. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background and really share with you where we're at. And I'll let Ravine and Connor take it from here. You'll hear more from me later.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Before I kind of advance the slide, I really want to call out something about your vision that really touched me, which was in this journey of optimization, let's call it, it was very important to you to maintain the human aspect and element of home care, of your values and culture. And so really where we and you have inserted automation is really around those human touch points and leveraging today's technology to get to those human touch points as quickly as possible. And I thank you for, again, connecting Connor and myself as well to put it all together. But let's start with the very top of the funnel, right? Candidate engagement. That's really the first automation cycle that HelloHire helps with. And really the challenges that we're solving with candidate engagement today, and I'm sure this is nothing new to everyone here, but you advertise your job, you get tons of unqualified and in many cases uninterested applicants. You're constantly chasing candidates, whether it's on the phone, leaving voicemails, getting called back, email, text, everything. It's always very much outbound. It's almost like outbound sales. There are delays that happen with scheduling. You finally reach someone and you book some time. You got to go back and forth, find that timing. If your calendar is booked, it could be pushed out days, some cases weeks, but not too often here. And then the no call, the no shows. And of course, in this competitive environment, making sure that you're delivering a top-notch, frictionless candidate experience. And so these are the challenges that all frontline recruitment industries, especially home care, are facing. And when we think about the traditional recruitment process, that's what most people are doing today. And where we lose most of our time is really in that first screening phase. So you have all these applications. How do you find out who's interested, who's qualified? You're chasing candidates, vetting them, scheduling, booking them into a traditional 30-minute interview. And now you're taking time away from people who are interested from those no-shows of 30 minutes, or someone who is really not a good fit for your agency, which you didn't need 30 minutes to know that. And so with HelloHire, it's really a process and technology platform, but essentially we will eliminate all of that screening time. So that is automation working for you, and will eliminate a lot of that time that's wasted in the interview process and provide you with a very fast, frictionless experience. And again, without going into all of the details, that'll be for another time, but really let's look at what that looks like in terms of results. Over the last 3 months that we've been working together, and this is a report pulled from HelloHire, there have been 858 applicants, or let's call them leads. These are people that are putting their hand up. There's an intention, applying for a job, clicking apply on Indeed. Hello Hire has reached out to all 858 of them instantly without any human intervention. We connected with 544. So 63% of applicants we were able to connect with. And if you think about what effort would be required in the regular traditional process to connect with 63% of applicants, it's astronomical. The platform disqualified 96 and scheduled 448 interviews. And so this is really your true applicant pool. This is someone that is, interested in the job and they're meeting your minimum requirements. Dan and team have been able to interview 188 of those applicants. So 42% of all applicants were met by the Cyprus team. And 98 of them were a good fit. So, they had that initial 10-minute interview. They are a good fit, and they moved on to the next process, which is the onboarding or credentialing and onboarding, which will be a perfect segue to Connor. But before that, I think I just wanted to share results from last week. So if we just look at last week, what did this look like? Hello Hire engaged with 32 out of the 39 applicants. It connected with that. It's even higher than 67%, saving 3 hours of manual effort at minimum. And I think if you look over here, what's really interesting is that of the 15 interviews that were done last week, 7 were great candidates. The average time per interview was 10 minutes. So when you think about the time investment here, it was 10 minutes per candidate and an average interview time of 1.2 days. And so again, because of the automation, this is where you're really benefiting from that. So I will hand it over to Connor to talk about what happens with these 7 yeses.
Thanks, Ravine. Yeah, what makes the partnership so beautiful between our two companies, and in application here, we'll explore it with Cyprus, is that your software, your platform does a really exceptional job of helping agencies reach conviction on whether they want to create a hire or make a hire or not, saving a huge amount of time and effort to reach that decision. And we take over right after that, which is once the decision to make a hire has been made, we want to take on all of the administrative aspects, credentialing, systems management. We'll talk about all of these in a second, of actually bringing on that caregiver and getting them active. Of course, we don't want to take on the human elements. We don't want to take on the building the relationship with the caregiver, understanding who they are, truly learning about them and caring about them as a person, which is imperative and something that technology will never take away from agencies. But everything that isn't that and is pushing paper, moving things around between systems, digitizing, that's stuff that we can do. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like for Cyprus and a little bit more broadly, just in general, an application to home care here. So home care is, as we all know, regulated around HR compliance to a pretty remarkable degree. Frankly, it's an astounding degree. It is a little bit counterintuitive why it's regulated. I mean, of course, the intentions are good, but the application is really challenging sometimes, and that's why we exist. We exist to help agencies achieve HR compliance beginning at onboarding. And so that means keeping up with state requirements, so understanding how compliance requirements are changing for our partners. That means communicating with caregivers around, basic compliance tasks, making sure that caregivers understand what is required of them, allowing them to transact the correct information and credentials when they're required, and really just taking that on for the agency. This means providing a wonderful employee experience. I mean, there's an interview that stands out to me from an executive at a very large home care agency lamenting how many caregivers he loses in this case to McDonald's simply because, I mean, people don't want to flip burgers, but it's a really seamless employee experience, just getting on board there. And he wants that, he described in this interview wanting the same quality employee experience in home care. And that's a vision that I'm really pushing for here at Home Care Pro, giving caregivers a clear, intuitive, simple experience to complete these administrative tasks that are a big part of actually doing home care work. And then, of course, I mean, there's been some really high profile events around data integrity and security. And we also, I mean, this is, of course, when we're dealing with super sensitive personal information, social security numbers, I mean, passports, all of these really critical, sensitive documents, moving those into a secure platform and away from more unsecured channels such as various SMS and, email inboxes. We want to take a role in making sure that caregiver data stays safe. Yeah, so that's kind of how we got started and sort of the vision for the company. Very often when we get involved with a new client, this is kind of a bad, it's a bad joke, but we find that the hiring managers are more closely resemble air traffic controllers than they do, people HR managers. So much time is spent manually moving data in between EMR, payroll, and other systems. Just remembering to follow up. I mean, we'll talk about the volume of messages that we send on behalf of Cyprus's team every month here in a second. Tracking down documents. I mentioned very often transacted between various individuals' emails and SMS or phones. Processing hundreds or if not thousands of documents, depending on the size of the agency every month. Remembering to plug in expiration dates, which is just an impossible task for an individual with that kind of volume. And of course, keeping track of that and requesting caregivers to update when necessary. And then finally, in the spare time that's left, trying to give visibility to the rest of the agency in terms of what actually is going on and helping executives make better decisions. I mean, it's an incredibly home care hiring managers need to, I mean, they need some recognition because this is just such an insanely challenging set of tasks. And beyond that, to actually take a role and, like I said at the beginning, in building culture, building relationships, getting to know caregivers. I mean, the things that really will differentiate an employer and make people really want to work there, they fall to the bottom far too often. And so our job, again, and actually, if you want to go to the next slide here, our job is to take care of all of those things, or as many of those things as we possibly can on the last side. So we upload data and documents into various systems. We have integrations with various EMR and payroll systems. We'll actually do the reporting and give managers or executives your immediate up-to-date visibility on your current HR compliance rate, monitoring the compliance status of each caregiver. We'll handle the notifying and transacting of documents, handle basic queries that come up from caregivers as these things need to be renewed. In many cases, we actually integrate or have automated the various state registry and background checks. So in Arizona, we perform all of the APS, Arizona Adult Protective Services registries checks on behalf of the Cyprus team. They don't need to actually go into that website and do that anymore. And finally, just keeping all of this information secure so that managers can spend time on building relationships, mentoring, creating culture, doing things that technology will never be able to do. And that's really why we exist and how we partner. So Ravine does an incredible job of getting caregivers in, allowing Bob's team to reach conviction. This is somebody that we want to have on the Cyprus team. This is Cyprus caliber caregiving talent. And then Home Care Pro takes over and just helps make sure that caregiver gets a top-notch employee experience, not in the culture sense, or not in the sort of mentorship sense, but just in the administrative sense, making sure that things are as easy and seamless as possible for both the managers that are managing that caregiver as well as the caregiver themselves. And so what this looks like, and these are results from last month, is the two metrics on the left are related to onboarding. So when Cyprus, Ravine was talking about what happens with the 7 yeses. So 77% of yeses complete their credentials during onboarding with Home Care Pro. That doesn't necessarily mean that they all come on board. You know, some may not pass that second interview. Sometimes those credentials they don't pass, they're not up to date. You know, a lot can happen, but caregivers provide the information that they are required to provide 77% of the time, at least in June for Cyprus. The average time for a caregiver to upload all of those credentials is 32 hours, which is very, very quick. We want to make this, again, as frictionless and seamless as possible. We processed 244 credentials without manager involvement last month. We sent over 700 notifications to caregivers and Cyprus staff on Bob's team's behalf. We do monthly review ROI with Bob's team. We seek to be as data driven as possible, and we estimate together that we saved 42 hours last month. And I want to call out as well that you know, we're a software platform. And so, you know, we do report on these metrics, but at any time, Bob's team has access to their onboarding dashboard, which tracks the current onboarding status of every caregiver, as well as the HR compliance dashboard, which gives their team visibility into both how many caregivers we are monitoring. And in this case, we integrate with Access Care. And so we're looking at the active caregivers that are with Cyprus's team in Access Care, and the compliance rate of each of those caregivers, or I should say the compliance rate, which is what % of those caregivers are compliant and up to date.
Connor, if I can just add, thank you for integrating with our enterprise software solution, Access Care. And while you show 42.75 hours saved, that integration itself has saved us a lot of time as well. And we haven't calculated that because there's no necessary keying in information, because you were able to build an API connection to Access Care and essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a techie, but it is able to suck out all the information pertaining to that potential caregiver into the EMR, into the enterprise software solution, Access Care. And all of that information populates into that caregiver profile. Even though they're still listed inactive, you have all of that information in there. Do I have that correct?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, again, it comes back to just how much time is wasted moving data between systems. When a caregiver provides their information to Home Care Pro, we want to make sure that nobody, neither the caregiver nor the manager, needs to input that information into the other systems that are required. And so that's right. When a caregiver onboards with Home Care Pro, we create that profile on Access Care on their behalf. When they upload credentials, we upload credentials into Access Care on their behalf. That's right.
And when credentials are coming up to expire, whether it be a first aid, CPR, or whatever the credentialing is, you're able to do those alerts through Home Care Pro, correct?
Correct. Yes. So we notify the caregiver on the manager's behalf when a credential is expiring. So the manager they don't need to take any action. The caregiver is able to update that credential independently. When they do update it, if it's verified, it goes into Access Care just with all the other credentials and documentation. We notify the manager only if the caregiver becomes non-compliant. And then the manager has the information that they need to take whatever action they see fit. It's all about just automation and providing visibility. That's what we seek to do.
And these are, obviously, as everyone knows, these are tasks that are very repetitive, they're redundant. If we can get workflow automation doing some of those tasks for us, we can spend, and you heard me talk about Cyprus' experience over the last 30 years, mine over 20. The one thing I've learned more than anything is that we need to still remain human. with our caregivers and our clients. And by doing all of this and allowing automation to do a lot of this, gives us more bandwidth and more time to be human. Thank you, Connor, and thank you, Ravine. So I know I talked a little bit about this. Basically, when we first came on to going back to recruiting caregivers and interviewing and everything, we had 19 caregivers at the end of January. Most of those were Medicaid caregivers, and within the Honor Care network, we had to have some rapid response caregivers to start our care right away. In February, we were able to bring back some caregivers that didn't come onto the Honor Care platform, but increasing our workforce and getting quality was really important to us. And for us to be able to do this in a way and do it fast and be able to still maintain quality was really important. So when you see these data points, a 207% increase since February, that is attributed to the great work that Dan Weeks from Cyprus and Jasmine Plett have done on our behalf, but even greater by having these collaborative partnerships that I have with Hello Hire and Home Care Pro. We could never do it without you guys. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And I think if we look at if we compare, or Connor, maybe you could talk to this one. I know you've got visibility here.
Sorry, yeah, I dropped data on here at the last minute, and it looks like it was you'd already started presenting. I updated your data actually. So when we compare Cyprus's, ignore take a look at both of them, but the image on the left has the up-to-date data. When we look at comparing Cyprus's conversion rates between the application and interview stage, which is what Hello Hire does, taking an application and getting that caregiver to the interview and allowing Cyprus's team to make a decision, 42% of those applicants complete an interview. In the interview to hired stage, which is where Home Care Pro takes a role, we're able to convert 55% of those caregivers, at least, to having all of the credentials and documentation and the correct systems that they need to be successfully hired. The Home Care Masters bar there, the data there on the left, is in reference to the Activated Insights, formerly known as Home Care Pulse report, benchmarking report, looking at that same data. The Masters refers to agencies that sit in the top 5% of revenue annually. And so Cyprus here is outperforming the Home Care Masters benchmark, the top 5% of agencies nationally in both areas. I really like we do a great job, but Bob, I really want to echo, this would not be possible without your team. They just do an exceptional job. We give them the tools, but they're just doing such great work here. So I really don't want to take too much credit because they're really they're conducting the show here. But yes, in both cases, moving from application to interview and interview to hired, your agency is doing a really exceptional job, outperforming a pretty high benchmark.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's open it up to questions. We're going to drop in everyone's contact information in the chat. So if you want to take anything offline, feel free to connect with each of us, but let's open it up to any questions. Feel free to drop it into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
And I'll also add LinkedIn. I wouldn't be here with Ravine if it wasn't for Raj linking into me. Seriously, and me and Raj really understood my business and asked some very provocative questions that really brought me in and wasn't trying to sell me. So, you should link into us. And again, I'm an open book if you want to contact me and my experience. If you want to reach out to Dan Weeks, you can find him on our website, Dan at Cyprus Home Care. We're happy to share And you know what, sharing best practices amongst colleagues, because that's what I really view each and every one of you, is really going to help us all do a better job and really knock the living stuffings out of private care, because private care is really growing, and we need to really tell our story and why employer-based agencies make sense.
And we really focused today's presentation on recruitment, but big question here, what about retention? Let's hopefully we'll have something for that in the fall. And just wanted to say, thanks to everyone here. As an exclusive thank you for being here. If you sign up for Hello Hire today, you will get the platform for free to hire your first caregiver. And so, again, we want to thank the Home Care Agency of America, Bob, Connor, the Hello Hire team, the Cyprus team, and really everyone here putting our energy together to really elevate everyone. And so again, big thanks to everyone here, and thank you.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. See you in October, or it's September, right, Jason?
October 28th and 29th.
Thank you. October 28th and 29th. I'll see you in Bellevue, Washington at the HCOA conference.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, guys.